please explain the difference because, you know, we have to, from my perspective, Lennon, we have to stop thinking mundanely. Yes, we are here and we are in the mundane, but the spiritual aspect of things is very much important, from my perspective, that is. They go hand in hand. So please explain this to the people, that what you're presenting is much more than just, okay, I'm going to find a partner. You're, in essence, helping people find their spiritual selves, their reflection.
Yes, and in the process, you know, to have people recognize the importance of seeing themselves as part of a cosmic event. That's what male-female relationships are about. I'm sorry, y'all. See, we have been so misguided on this concept of male-female relationships. We think it's about trying to find a mate and you know, having a good time, maybe going places and dating and, you know, having a good, you know, going out and maybe partying a little bit and, you know, just kind of enjoying the physicality of it. That's like what we've been sold upon. But the reality is that male-female relationships are, in fact, a manifestation of the cosmos, the masculine and the feminine. And I give an example of this. I think it's out the Manhood Lecture Series, and I'll share it right here with you all now. In the beginning, there was no beginning. In the beginning, there was no beginning. There was simply existence. Nothing more, nothing less. There was simply existence. All things existed from the beginning, which was not a beginning, because existence, by virtue of it existing, there was no need for there to be a beginning, and there will never be an end. The fact that it exists proves, in the first place, that existence was infinite, and it always has been and always will be. Existence, therefore, is the foundation to be able to exist, and existence has always existed by virtue of the fact that it exists. From that platform, what we see is out of existence, we see the manifestations of various levels of creation. Many of us, we think that creation was when things started. No, creation is just a pinpoint within the whole of existence. But existence existed prior to creation. I know, y'all like, what is he talking about? I'm going to bring it back around. Creation, therefore, as a manifestation of existence, it's like a spiral. And out of this spiral, we see many other forms of creation. And the more and more creation takes place throughout, quote-unquote, time, you see that the expansion of creation continues to take place throughout time. So it's through existence that all this takes place. When creation that initial creation, when it looked upon itself, and I'm giving this as you know, kind of like a symbolic representation, when it looked upon itself, it saw that it was whole. But because of its wholeness, it did not have the capacity to perceive the full breadth of itself, because its wholeness was so very vast and so very profound. People understand this concept. When creation looked upon itself as it existed in existence, it saw that its parameters being infinite, that there was no way that it can truly understand what it was and how profoundly incredible it was, and how deep it was, and how high it was, and how low it was, and how profoundly gifted. It could not perceive it because it was a whole. It could only see itself as a whole, but not in terms of from the outside in, but rather from the inside out. That's the only manner that it could perceive itself. So it's like right now, if you only can see through your eyes, but you've never seen your body, how do you know what you look like? If you can only see through your eyes and you've never seen your body, how can you tell what color skin you have, or how big your feet are, or how how big your shoulders are as a man? How could you perceive that unless you saw something from the outside in? You need a mirror, as it were. So creation, therefore, in its infinite wisdom, decided, well, why don't I spiral out and create myself in multi-dimensions, one coming from the masculine perspective and the other coming from the feminine perspective. Now, I'm using this as a symbolic representation so that we can understand what I'm getting at in terms of when males and females come together here on Earth, that it's really a manifestation of us paying respects to all of creation as it is epitomized from within the context of existence itself. So in manifesting itself, creation manifesting itself as masculine and feminine, it now had two eyes to see itself, one masculine eye and one feminine eye. And therefore, it could project back to itself its true greatness, its true power, the magnitude of itself, because now it had two eyes to see. However, one of those eyes could only perceive itself from a more masculine orientation. And that other eye could only perceive itself from a feminine orientation. And interestingly enough, creation began to manifest out of the masculine and feminine qualities. And in the masculine, you start to see the manifestation of the masculine principles, understanding of creation and existence. And in the feminine, you start to see the manifestations of the feminine's orientation and their perspective as to creation and existence. And then it all spirals out over time, and more things begin to create and more things begin to manifest into existence over and over and over and over again. And at some point, we have the human being come into existence. And as the human being comes into existence on this particular planet and beyond, the human being found that when it looked upon itself, that there was two manifestations of itself, a masculine and a feminine. But in the beginning, in terms of the biological entity that we call the human being, it did not see the masculine and feminine as being separate from one another because it had spiritual understanding. It had metaphysical perspective. What am I getting at here? That in the beginning, those wise human beings recognized that the manifestation of the masculine and feminine was coming from from the whole in the first place. The whole of what? The whole of creation. That sought to manifest itself in two distinctly different ways as a complement to itself so that it can begin to see the full breadth of what it was. Now, when we engage each other as men and women, what we are paying tribute to is the cosmic reality of the masculine and feminine being a representation of a whole, not something that was ever separate. No, it was never separate. It was just a manifestation via creation of a whole. When we understand it that way, we recognize that whenever the masculine and feminine being comes together, that there is no need to be divided on any issue, feminist movement. Who's wearing the pants? Who's in control of the money? Who's in control of the children? No. That lacks spiritual insight. When we come together as masculine and feminine beings, what we are paying tribute to is all of creation and the manifestation of the masculine and feminine coming back together. Why? Why do we do this? I talk about this in the lecture series. Why do we come back to each other? And why are we so compelled to come back to each other? Why is it that as a man, when I saw my wife, I was so compelled by her, there was something that was calling me. It was something that would reach into the core of me, into the essence of me that was saying, come back home. What was that? What was that essentially? It had nothing to do with what she looked like. It had nothing to do that she was physically beautiful. It had nothing to do with that. What did it have to do with? It had to do with the spirituality inherent in me that wanted to reach back and begin to experience the totality and wholeness of me as a man who had come back into the company of the feminine principle, just as we saw in the beginning of creation. You see, this is the orientation. This is what I'm going to teach my son. I'm not going to be teaching him to go out here and date. Please. I'm not going to teach him, look, son, you got to be out here on the prowl and have sex with as many women as you possibly. No, that's not what I'm going to teach him. I'm going to teach him and my daughters the sacredness of the union between man and woman. And that when we engage it properly, what we are doing is we are affirming the cosmos. We are affirming creation. And we are participating in what? We are participating in existence. An existence that was there from the beginning, and in the beginning there was no beginning. That's what compels us to come back to each other, so that we can reconnect the masculine and feminine beings, so we can come back into that complete and whole self. With all of the different levels of creation that has taken place since the beginning, since creation came into existence, within the context of existence itself, all the various manifestations, and we for some reason, we think that as we create and we continue to create, that we become more and more separate from each other. No, that should not be the orientation. Because essentially what takes place is that need for us inherently as spiritual beings to reconnect with ourselves as a man to reconnect with the feminine being, as a woman to reconnect with the man. That's what this is all about. So all of this glamorization and this whole Hollywood construct and the man's supposed to go out and find and like a little beast on the prowl, that is the illusion. It is far more profound than that. It is far more meaningful than that. And when we have that level of understanding, what we find is the upliftment of the spiritual engagement between the masculine and feminine being. And when we have that engagement take place, what we find is a sort of a model through which more creation can begin to spiral out, i.e. children, grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and on and on and on.